Hello and welcome back to Starting Out with Quantum Computing. I'm your host, as always, Lloyd, and I think I've got an exciting one for you this time. So, today I want to talk about SAXON Q. They just did the impossible. They created a room temperature, plug and play, portable quantum computer. They're a Germany-based company, and they recently announced the world's first 100 plus diamond qubit quantum computer, and it is genuinely mind-blowing. But let me take you back a little bit. I once asked a professor of mine this question. I said, do you think we will ever have portable quantum computers, ones that we can put on our desks as we do with laptops? And of course, the answer that I received was a resounding definitely not, never. And in part, I understood where my professor was coming from, but I just felt as though quantum computing would inevitably lead to smaller and more portable designs. And I dared to dream of a day where there would be a so-called quantum laptop. And with SAXON Q's latest press release, I think that day has become ever so slightly closer. So let's talk about SAXON Q. What did they actually do? Well, they built something known as a diamond-based nitrogen vacancy quantum computer. In other words, it's a quantum computer that makes use of the defects in lab-grown diamonds to perform quantum operations. And most importantly, it shatters the previous record of 10 qubits, which was obtained by Delft University of Technology in 2019. And it offers potential buyers 128 qubits this summer or 512 by next year. And incredibly, both systems operate at room temperature with no cryogenic cooling, no vacuum required, and they're very portable. And this is extremely rare and very desirable, given there is minimal specialist equipment required. SAXON Q's systems fit within a standard server rack, and they can continuously run without issue via just a normal electrical power supply. There's no need to recalibrate the system. There are no environmental controls. It's all sorted for you inside the box. So any company could simply just buy this quantum computer, plug it into the wall, essentially, and it would start working. And SAXON Q also claims that their quantum computers are energy efficient. And given cryogenics aren't needed, this seems most likely to be true. These new quantum computers are protected by 220 or over 220 patents and pending applications, so seemingly everyone is going to want a slice of this technology. Moreover, according to SAXON Q's roadmap, they don't plan to stop at 512 qubits, and they instead plan to reach 10,000 qubits around 2030. So, as quoted by the CEO and co-founder of SAXON Q, Marius Grundmann, he said, the two computers, the SXQ128 and the SXQ512, are quantum computers that operate the way a computer should, reliably, continuously, and without a team of specialists to keep it running. So how do these quantum computers work specifically? So let's go back to the 1970s, where a pair of scientists would discover something rather peculiar. What this duo realized was that certain imperfect diamonds could shine with a marvelous red light when illuminated in a certain way. The study concluded that as a result of radiation damage in diamonds, moving holes called vacancies were formed. If this diamond also has a small amount of nitrogen impurities in it, then these vacancies and nitrogen atoms can bond together and form a stable center. This is what the qubit is made from. As these nitrogen atoms sit trapped inside the vacancy, a quantum property of their electrons, known as spin, can suddenly be easily manipulated without affecting anything nearby. Sometimes such diamonds that are nitrogen rich occur in nature, but naturally it is much easier to create nitrogen-filled diamonds in a lab. And so scientists realized that we could use highly tuned lasers to exploit the electron spin and manipulate it for computation, for quantum computation. And this is how qubits are formed and how quantum computation works using NV centers. What allowed SAXON Q to push beyond the 10-qubit record was more of a materials breakthrough. As they induce radiation damage to create vacancies, they simultaneously implant sulfur into the diamond. The reason for this is because the added sulfur donates its electrons to moving vacancies, which in turn improves the chances for NV center formation. We also want to keep this NV center negatively charged, ideally, as quantum computation relies upon this particular state. So having extra sulfur electrons around and nearby maintains this negative state. So in turn, not only do we now get a higher efficiency of NV center formation, but we also get better qubit control. According to their statement, SAXON Q has achieved a 99.92% single qubit fidelity rate. In other words, there is less than one error per 1,000 operations. And that is assuming no active error correction, which you could easily tack on to improve the rate even more. However, CEO Grundmann has further commented, saying that this fidelity can go up to 99.98% in operations that involve a single qubit. So, how does SAXON Q's quantum computer compare? Well, I think it certainly holds up. I did a quick fidelity comparison, and I found that if you look at certain companies, SAXON Q's percentages lie within the correct ballpark. So if we take Atom Computing, they're a famous company. One of their quantum computers with 1,180 qubits has about 99.6% fidelity. Or let's take one of IBM's computers, Fez, with 156 qubits. That has a 1 qubit fidelity of 99.97 and a 2 qubit fidelity of 99.56. So SAXON Q's numbers, they generally sit within the correct ballpark, indicating that their quantum computer could compete with the huge players. Naturally, it is always challenging to compare different quantum computers, as their qubits aren't necessarily made of the same stuff. This means different quantum computers won't scale up in the same way. They will require different conditions to work and won't be able to perform exactly the same operations. They also don't always have the same applications. So, for example, NV center systems have also been considered to be an important tool for quantum sensing applications. Nevertheless, if SAXON Q's computer can demonstrate its worth as it comes onto the market, then it truly would be one of the first fully functional room temperature quantum computers to exist. So what's the verdict? The team at SAXON Q have indeed pushed the limits of NV center quantum computing with the revolutionary idea of implanting sulfur into diamonds. They offer a quantum computer that boasts high fidelities, operates at room temperature, and only needs a standard computer rack and standard power unit to work. Because they are selling their two quantum computers directly, it means that clients don't have to use quantum computers through the cloud, as we sometimes do, and do not need to worry about latency. It might therefore mean that these NV computers can offer better computation at a cheaper cost. Scaling beyond 512 qubits is the main challenge ahead, and will require even more ingenious solutions to squeeze thousands of qubits onto a single chip. But what excites me the most, however, is the shift of focus towards easy setup quantum computers. Imagine a world where you could order a powerful quantum computer to your house, plug it into the wall, and run quantum algorithms there and then. You wouldn't need to buy expensive magnets, cryogenics, special class labors. You wouldn't need to rent a very, very clean laboratory. You wouldn't need to create an almost perfect vacuum or near absolute zero temperatures. In my opinion, this reality is becoming much less of a dream. And because of advancements from companies like SAXON Q, it makes me believe that quantum laptops are just on the horizon. And for that, I am very, very excited. Thank you very much, as always, for tuning in to Starting Out with Quantum Computing. I've been your host, Lloyd, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.